The king who was destroyed from within. There was a time when Saul stood taller than every man around him, chosen, anointed, and filled with a kind of authority that made people believe he could never fall. When he was first crowned, there was humility in him, a hesitation that looked like wisdom, and a quiet dependence on God that made him worthy of the throne he carried. But power, when it is not guarded carefully, begins to change a man slowly, and Saul did not notice it happening. At first, the victories came easily. Battles were won, enemies were pushed back, and the people praised him loudly. Songs were sung about his strength, his leadership, and his success. For a while, Saul believed those songs were simply gratitude. But over time, something deeper took root inside him. The praise did not just pass through him, it stayed. It settled in his heart and began to reshape the way he saw himself. Confidence turned into pride, and pride slowly pushed out obedience. The moment everything shifted was not dramatic. It did not come with thunder or warning. It came through disobedience, small at first, then repeated. Saul began to make decisions without waiting for God, justifying them as necessary, practical, even wise. But partial obedience is still disobedience, and the distance between Saul and God grew quietly. Eventually, the presence that once guided him no longer rested on him in the same way, and something else took its place. The change was not visible at first, but it was deeply felt. Saul became restless, unable to find peace even in moments of quiet. His thoughts turned dark, his emotions unstable, and his temper unpredictable. The man who once led with clarity now lived with confusion, as if something inside him had fractured. Servants noticed it before he did. They saw the way his mood shifted without warning, the way anger rose suddenly, the way silence became heavy around him. To calm him, they brought a young shepherd into the palace, a boy named David. David did not look like a warrior, but there was something about him that carried peace. When he played the harp, the tension in the room eased, and for a moment, Saul felt relief. The darkness inside him would quiet, and he could breathe again. But relief is not healing, and what lived inside Saul was not something music could remove permanently. At first, Saul welcomed David. He kept him close, trusted him, even relied on him. But then came the day that changed everything. David went out to battle and returned victorious, not just as a soldier, but as a hero. The people sang again, but this time the words were different. They praised David more than Saul, lifting the young man higher than the king himself. Something broke inside Saul when he heard those words. It was not loud. It did not explode outward immediately. It settled deep within him, turning into something dangerous. Jealousy took root, and unlike fear or anger, jealousy does not fade quickly. It grows, feeding on comparison, twisting perception, and rewriting reality. Saul began to see David not as a servant, but as a threat. From that moment on, peace left him completely. Every time David played the harp, Saul felt something different. What once brought comfort now stirred irritation. What once felt calming now felt like mockery. The presence of David became unbearable, not because David had done anything wrong, but because Saul's heart had changed. One day, as David played, Saul sat watching him, gripping a spear in his hand. The music filled the room, soft and steady, but Saul's mind was anything but calm. Thoughts raced through him, convincing him that David was taking everything from him: his honor, his position, his future. The truth no longer mattered. What mattered was what Saul believed. Without warning, he threw the spear. It cut through the air with force, aiming directly at David. But David moved just in time. the weapon striking the wall behind him. The room fell silent, but the damage was already done. Trust had shattered. Fear replaced loyalty. And Saul, the king who once led a nation, had just tried to kill the very man who served him faithfully. From that moment, everything became a chase. Saul could not rest while David was alive. He sent men after him, tracked him across wilderness and mountains, turning his energy not toward enemies of Israel, but toward destroying one man. David fled, hiding in caves, sleeping in places where no king's servant should ever have to survive. Yet even while running, David refused to strike back. More than once, he had the opportunity to kill Saul, to end the pursuit, to reclaim peace. But he did not. He chose restraint, believing that judgment belonged to God, not to him. Saul, however, could not stop. The more he chased David, the more unstable he became. His decisions grew reckless, his anger more intense, and his isolation deeper. Those around him began to fear him, not respect him. The throne that once represented strength now felt like a prison of his own making. He had everything a king could want: power, authority, recognition, but inside, he was collapsing. The tragedy of Saul's story is not that he lost his kingdom, it is that he lost himself long before the crown was taken from him. There came a night when even Saul realized how far he had fallen. Desperate, confused, and unable to hear from God, he sought answers in places he once would have condemned. That decision revealed the depth of his desperation. The man who once led with purpose now searched for direction in darkness, because he had lost the ability to hear truth. By the time Saul stood on the battlefield for the final time, he was no longer the man who had once been chosen. Fear replaced courage, confusion replaced clarity, and isolation surrounded him. The enemies he once defeated now stood strong against him, and the strength he once carried was gone. When the battle turned against him, Saul faced the reality he had been running from for years. He had lost everything. Not in a single moment, but through a series of choices that slowly pulled him away from who he was meant to be. Saul's life ended not with victory, but with tragedy, and the weight of his story remains as a warning. It shows how a man can be chosen, blessed, and elevated, yet still fall if he allows pride, jealousy, and disobedience to take root. It shows how internal battles can destroy a person long before external defeat arrives. But hidden within this story is something deeper. Saul's downfall is not just about failure. It is about the importance of guarding the heart. Because what grows inside a person will eventually shape everything outside of them. Power cannot protect a corrupted heart. Position cannot replace obedience. And success cannot sustain a soul that has lost its connection to God. Saul was not destroyed in battle first. He was destroyed within himself. And that is what makes his story both tragic and unforgettable.